some of the evidence in these clinical trials does show the efficacy of the psychedelic compounds. And one of the questions I had, and I know that you've done a huge amount of research on this, is if psychedelics are effective, even in some cases, what does that say about the causes of these?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
The honest, complete answer is we don't know. But the best theory that I've come across is that if you look at the different disorders that psychedelics appears to be effective in treating, depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, addiction, all of these are mental disorders that involve a kind of rigidity of thought. People stuck in loops of rumination, inflexible thinking. They need this drug to get through the day. They have this narrative in their head that they're a bad person, that nothing is working in their life, or they have anxiety and they replay loops about, what makes them anxious. What psychedelics appear to do, what psilocybin appears to do, is break those habits of thought. It's kind of a solvent. And so that it shakes things up in a way that makes the brain more plastic, more able to learn new patterns, because this is essentially people stuck in old patterns. And so I think that this is probably its contribution. The most beautiful metaphor of this that I heard from a neuroscientist, he said, I think of your mind as a hill covered in snow. And it would have been a mountain, except he was from Holland, and they don't have mountains. And your thoughts are sleds going down the hill. After a while, your thoughts are going to keep getting drawn like attractors into the same grooves. And it's going to be very hard to get down the hill without falling into those grooves. Think of the psychedelic experience as a fresh snowfall, filling the grooves, allowing you to take any path you want down the hill. So I think it has to do with habitual thinking, rigid brains, stuck brains, brains that have too much order and need to be disordered a bit. So, this all remains to be proven. There's actually a group at Mass General at Harvard that is looking at the whole question of rumination and psychedelics and seeing if that is indeed the common denominator. Because we think of all these diagnoses as actual real things, but they're really conventions of the psychiatry industry. And if you read the DSM, the whole encyclopedia of diagnoses, every 5 years they throw out a bunch, they add a bunch, they don't really know what they're doing. So I remember asking a psychiatrist, I said, isn't it a little weird that this same drug works on these 5 different things, addiction and obsession? And he said, well, how do you know they're different things? Maybe they're all different symptoms of the same brain, same kind of brain. And so, if you think about it, anxiety is worry about the future. Depression is really being a victim of the past, but it's a similar mental construct, and psychedelics appears to weaken it.
I'd read that sort of analogy of the hill, and it really stayed with me. That hill with the snow, this idea that our trauma or whatever it might be, our past experiences have created these grooves which we just slide down every single day and over again. And you talked about previously how that's why there might be a case for doing psychedelics later in your life. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do feel, as life goes on, we become more creatures of habit. It's just a given. It's about learning. We learn what works. We learn the algorithms that get us through the day, get us through a fight with our spouse, get us through negotiating with our children, whatever it is. We have these algorithms. They're handy. They work. They save us time. And we are efficient creatures. But habits blind you to reality. You're one step removed from experience. You're saying, okay, that's this situation. I'm going to play this tape. And you lose your sense of wonder. And that's so important. And awe, awe is one of the most important emotions. And as we get older, kids have this awe experience every day, every minute. It could be a cookie. It could be walk down the street. It's just incredible. And the reason is that it's all new to them and they haven't formed these habits. And as we get older, I think that's where the value of psychedelics is really important, because they are reliable awe inducers, and that they make you see things freshly. And, I talk in the book about this very common psychedelic insight that love is the most important thing in the world. And we laugh, and it sounds like a Hallmark card and such a cliche. But what is a cliche? It's a truth that's been overused. And we protect ourselves with this sense of irony and banality. But love is the most important thing in the world. So there's truth to that. And that the line between banality and profundity is very fine. And so, you're always hearing people who have psychedelic experiences, and they come to you with this revelation of the obvious. But we need to be reminded of the obvious.